Hey guys, it's Bailey from Making Up the Midwest, and this is going to be a long overdue overview of the Physicians Formula bronzer line. A while back when I did an overview of the Too Faced bronzer line, a couple of you guys asked if I could do the same for Physicians Formula, and rightfully so because they have an unusually extensive line of bronzers, so it can be hard to kind of wade through and find which one's right for you. So that is what I'm going to do today. If you want to see all that, I'm going to be talking about 13 bronzers here, so because we have a lot of ground to cover, let's get started. The first two I'm going to be talking about fall into the bronzer highlighter all-in-one category. The first one is, I think, probably the more noticeable of the two. It's the Shimmer Strips. These have been around for ages, and the one that I have is the Miami strip. It says custom bronzer, blush, and eyeshadow. These look very similar to the Bobbi Brown Shimmer Strips, but also Revlon recently launched something similar as well. Basically what you get in these is a gradient of 5 different shadows ranging anywhere from light frosty highlight to deep shimmery bronze. You can use each of the shades individually to create an eye look, or you can pick them apart into, say, the top few to create a bronzer or the bottom few to create a highlight. They're very effective at doing all of those, but in comparison to the other product, a relatively newer one that is very similar, the powders are a little bit harder than this one I'm about to mention. This is the Natural Nude Shimmer Strips All-in-One Custom Nude Palette for Face and Eyes, and I have an entirely separate review up of this, review and demo I believe of this one, so I won't go too much into detail about this. I'll link that in the down bar below instead. What I'll tell you about this is, in addition to the shadows being a little bit softer than in the Bobbi Brown looking version of this palette, there are quite a few more shades offered within this bronzer. You still have the same capability of taking either the highlight to highlight your face or the bronze side to glow, make everything glow a little bit more, but you're also just given a few more shades to work with in your eye area. Additionally, when you swirl all of these together, as you'll see in the swatches that I show at various points throughout this video, you'll see that the Miami strip is a little bit more bronzed when they're all mixed together than the Natural Nude. There are a few more pinks within the color range in here, and that really shines through when you mix them all together to swatch them. So, main difference between the two, if I had to pick one, I would go with the softer one because I find this is easier to work with on both the eyes and face. However, both are very effective. This one is a cult classic, so if you're looking for a highlighter, both are great. Oh, before I move on though, one thing I do want to say about these as bronzers is that they are very shimmery, in case you couldn't tell from the close-ups and swatches. So for those of you who don't like a shimmery bronzer, you're going to want to pass these up, but it's great as a highlighter and all-in-one sort of eye palette. Now moving more into the nude wear line, I have two, as you can tell, that look very similar. One is the Nude Wear Glowing Nude Powder in the shade Medium, and the other is the Nude Wear Glowing Nude Bronzer in just one shade bronzer. And when I initially picked these up, I thought they were both bronzers, but as you can tell by the title, one is just a powder. And part of what led me to think that is, as you'll come to see, Physicians Formula will make a few different shades of bronzer within one line. So it didn't surprise me that I thought one was a bronzer when it's actually a powder, because you look inside the powder and there are four different colors that are drastically different. Like, I don't think you could alternate between those seasonally even, which was what made me think it was a bronzer. So here I have it swatched. Even though it's technically a powder, I do think that those with super fair skin tones can use this as a somewhat satin to matte bronzer and have it look really nice to just warm up their overall complexion. However, there is also a bronzer within this line, and both of these came with a shimmer overspray. It has Nude Wear actually embossed in the powder, as you could kind of faintly see here, but that obviously wears away, which I tend to not like, because you know it's going to wear away, and what you're going to find is again a satin to matte bronzer in here. Now the benefit to getting something like this is that it does have those 4 shades, so you can either take a more precise brush like this and get in there individually if you want to contour with the shade that is exactly right for you, or you can go in with something that is a little more broad like this and just kind of swirl them all together. Pick 2 here on the side, here on the bottom, wherever the right shades for you are to kind of get the right mix for your skin tone. Versatility is really where the upside in a bronzer like this lies. Something that I think is important to mention though, especially with this kind of quad of shades, is you have one quadrant over here that is very yellow, and I think that skews the overall swatch of this to be very yellow leaning. In reality, I think you could grab the three of these and have it be less warm if you are on the cooler side of the skin tone spectrum, because you look at a swatch of this and you think that is entirely too yellow for me. So what I would do if you're thinking that is take this and use it as a golden highlight and then use the rest as a bronzer. Overall, however, in fact, both of these are very smooth, not really all that powdery. They blend out beautifully, as is the case for a lot of these bronzers, with a few exceptions here and there. But if you're thinking about this bronzer specifically, they are definitely great, and you absolutely get the versatility from this one in particular. Now I'm moving into the Bronze Booster subline of Physicians Formula, and the first one I want to talk about is relatively new to the brand overall, and it's the Glow Boosting Beauty Balm BB Bronzer. Mine is in the shade medium to dark because I wanted to sample a few to show you just how deep these shades can go, because overall there isn't a whole lot within the entire range that goes too terribly dark. The line Physicians Formula as a whole kind of caters to very fair to medium deep-ish skin tones. So I wanted to pick this up just so you could see what a dark bronzer really means coming from this line. As you can see here, for the most part it is an entirely matte bronzer, and then in the center there is this funny pink dot. It's really not practical for anything. It doesn't add, it has a little bit of shimmer to it, but it doesn't really add any of that shimmer or any of that pigment to the rest of the bronzer. So it's mostly just for looks because it's not really all that functional. Aside from that, this bronzer is beautifully matte and it really blends out all those flaws. There's not a shimmer in sight in this, and because of that, it's really great for contouring. And while I'm on it, something I want to touch on about the brand overall, Physicians Formula, is that their packaging might seem bulky at first, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's because the bulk of their face palettes period, have a mirror and a brush. Even if you're not a fan of them, nearly all of these come with a brush. In fact, I think all that I'm going to mention, but for the Shimmer Strip, this Shimmer Strip comes with both a brush and a mirror. So I personally really appreciate that because they all are also sizable mirrors. You can actually do your makeup in them. They're nice and functional, and the brushes aren't half bad either. So just a general brand note overall, in addition to having good products for the most part, you also get some awesome packaging that's practical and functional when on the go. Next in the Bronze Booster line is the Airbrushing Bronzing Veil Deluxe Edition in light to medium, and this I thought was interesting because when I first picked this up, I thought it was so dark, especially for being a light to medium product. Dark compared to something that is a medium to dark product, so something to be aware of. This isn't necessarily consistent across the line, but definitely something to be aware of when it comes to this particular bronzer, is that light to medium is still pretty dark. So this is the Airbrushing Bronzing Veil. It is a satin shimmery, it's really a shimmery bronzer, but the shimmer is so fine that it comes off as a satin sort of finish, which I think is why it gives your skin that airbrushed effect. When you first get it, there's kind of this shimmery coppery overlay, which is absolutely beautiful, but that tends to die down with a few uses, and so ultimately what you get is definitely that satin airbrush type finish. This is another one of those that definitely leans very warm, so those of you who aren't flattered, you don't tend to like wearing very warm toned bronzers, this will not be one for you. But if you are a fan of very deep, like bronze goddess looking bronzers, this is one to love. On to what I hate to say is my least favorite bronzer that I've ever tried from Physicians Formula. It is the Glow Boosting Sunstones in light to medium. They are these little stones, as the name suggests. You have a brush here. You also get a powder puff here. Neither of them are effective at applying these products because what you get is a bunch of little balls that you need really more a brush like this to kind of swirl inside. But ultimately, what you end up getting is just a bunch of shimmery nothingness. It actually took taking a pearl out and rubbing it on my arm to get the swatch that I'm about to flash up on the screen. These really aren't all that pigmented. They really don't even add all that much shimmer and glitter if that's what you're after with a product like this. So I have to say, of the entire line, while this is considered a bronzer, I wouldn't say it does much of anything in terms of color payoff. So there's that product. And last for the Bronze Booster line, at least here for a while, is the Glow Boosting Pressed Bronzer in Fair to Light. And I wanted to pick this up because it looks very, very similar to a super popular matte bronzer out, the Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil bronzer. In fact, it is super matte, it's super flattering to super fair skin tones, which is the appeal of the Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil, is that you can wear it as a very fair skin person and not look like an Oompa Loompa. That is what this will give you. So heads up to all the fair skin girls out there who still want to rock a bronzer or a contour, definitely have your eye on this. Next bronzer is from the Mineral Wear line, and it is one that landed in a favorites not last month because I think I skipped last month, but 2 months ago. This was in a favorites. It's the Mineral Wear Talc-Free Mineral Airbrushing Light Bronzer, and it has this cool little wavy design inside. Essentially, why I loved it is that it has a beautiful satin finish. This is the light version, so you can see it's a little darker than the ultralight for the super fair skin girls, and yet it still is going to give you that super matte look. You can use it to contour without being super orange, super dark. Up next is a Happy Booster Glow and Mood Boosting 2-in-1 bronzer and blush. This is in bronze and natural, so I'm not sure if there are multiple shades of this blush, but the appeal with this is that you get not only a bronzer but a blush as well. What is a pretty berry pinky leaning blush, but more importantly, the bronzer is a light satin finish bronzer that is very, very subtly laced with gold. So subtle that you can still use it as a contour if you'd like. The only benefit to having something like this is that it does include a blush. However, something that I've experienced with the entire Happy Booster line is that the blushes aren't very pigmented. So again, if you have a deep to dark skin tone, I don't think these will show up to be much of anything. So something to be conscious of. Not that you would be buying this anyway for the bronzer if you have deep to dark skin tone, but something in general to make a note of with the Happy Booster line is they are just very lightly pigmented. Up next is definitely the deepest bronzer in the line, something that I think would be best suited for those deep to dark skin tones. This is the Cashmere Wear Ultra Smoothing Bronzer, and it is just in the shade bronzer, so I'm not sure if there are multiple shades of this, like light, medium, or dark. Here's what it looks like inside, and this glides on like butter, and it is super pigmented. So if you are taking a super dense brush to apply this as a contour, use a very light and dainty hand, because I'm not sure, was it a tutorial? I did it very recently where I smacked a brush in there because I was trying to get my makeup on really fast, and I ended up with these super contoured cheeks. A little too much for the daytime, if you know what I mean. So definitely be careful with this because it is super, super pigmented. You can see there's like this light gold strip running through here. It doesn't really provide much of anything in terms of shimmer or highlight to this product. I would say it's a solidly satin to matte bronzer. So like I said, great for all over bronzing as well as contouring. Moving on, we are almost done, I swear. This is another bronze booster from the Bronze Booster line, the last one, I think. This is the Glow Boosting Season to Season Bronzer in light to medium. This, again, is another one of those where you get 4 quadrants of colors. This one is a little more subtle than the Nude Wear bronzer. You can see here the dark doesn't go nearly as dark when the light gets a little bit lighter. So if you're looking for something that you can use to transition from season to season or mix and match to perfectly adapt to your skin tone, this is another great alternative. However, it is going to be more friendly to those with a fairer skin tone. This is another one of those, by the way, that has a little dot in the center here that provides a hint of shimmer that shows up a little bit in the swatch, but for the most part, if you keep your brush out here on the perimeter where the real bronzing shades are, it's a pretty true matte to satin bronzer. And last, in this whole bronzer bonanza, I have the Summer Eclipse Radiant Bronzing Powder in Sunlight, which conveniently has a little sun right here in the middle. This is another one where the sun kind of looks like it wants to be kind of a highlight. In fact, it's more of a yellow tone bronzer with intermittent golden sparkles. Very small, but still something that you are going to pick up on your cheeks very subtly. And that is surrounded by a light matte kind of satin bronzer. This is one to me that leaned very yellow and is very light, so it really narrows down who exactly this is suited for. So just something to keep in mind when should you need a bronzer that is like that. That is everything from the entire Physicians Formula bronzing line, or at least the shades I have. There are absolutely more bronzers, I think, and even more shades of the bronzers that I have in here. This is just what I could pick up in the time and patience that I had that was allotted to me, so I hope it helped anyway. I want to make some overall kind of broad recommendations depending on your needs. you probably picked this up before, but just so it's kind of said in conclusion, if you're looking for a good highlighter all-in-one product, definitely refer to these highlighters that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If you want something that's going to adapt with you seasonally, like I said, pick up either this Nude Wear 4-in-1 bronzer or this seasonal bronze boosting bronzer. If you aren't afraid of a little bit of satin shimmer, definitely pick up this Sunshine guy. This is the Airbrushing Bronzing Mineral Veil. It makes your skin look nice and flawless, but do beware that it leans a little orange. And the Happy Booster, but again with this, beware that the blush is not all that pigmented. Next up are the mattes. If you are loving a good matte bronzer that also doubles as a contour, there is the Mineral Wear bronzer, the Cashmere bronzer, the BB bronzer, and the Radiant Bronzing Powder. All of those are just going to depend on your skin tone and how deep you want your bronze or contour to get. And last is one that, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to anyone because it is just not my favorite, and it is those bronzing bead things. So that is it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you found it useful. I'd love to hear what your favorites from the Physicians Formula are in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!